So let's talk about U.S. soccer. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy around Christian Pulisic's comments after the Morocco game that he wished there were more American fans.
Man, that's spun out of control, by the way.
Yeah, it feels like it has. You're talking to somebody right after a game, and I think he's just simply saying that I just wish there were more fans wearing the U.S. jersey in the stands. And I don't think it's too crazy. It's been spun out of control. We've had these conversations before. Obviously, the one where we lost to Costa Rica in World Cup qualifying in New York. There are more Costa Rican fans. But Michael Bradley, I'm giving him a shout out. He had a comment many years ago when he was playing for the U.S. where he basically said, this is part of it. This is part of living in this country. We have diverse cultures and backgrounds in this country. That's what makes this country special. I'm proud to live in this country. And if we have to deal with more fans from another country at one of our home games, so be it. That's part of it. And I'm proud to live here. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally in lockstep with Michael Bradley on that. That's just part of it. And so I understand he wants a little bit. It's a friendly, there's a lot of things that go into this. The ticket prices are high, ridiculously high. That needs to be sorted out. But it's also the Wednesday after Memorial Day where probably a lot of people spent money to travel and all that. The scheduling wasn't great. So there's a lot of pieces to this. But yes, to your point, Heath, it seems like it's spinning way out of control.
Well, the dynamic of it spun out of control because the presumption and some of what I think are clickbaity pieces that came out about it were that, oh, you're saying the people who wear Morocco jerseys aren't Americans. And there's that sort of like gray area that Christian Pulisic has found himself in the past of sort of politically of they've just attached this idea that like, oh yeah, Christian Pulisic thinks you're only American if you wear an American jersey at the stadium. And I think that's not what the saying was. It was probably a mix of the fact that the game probably, I don't know if it was well marketed or not. I think it was 20,000 out of the 26,000 that could potentially be sold. So there was a solid attendance. The three of us have all played in stadiums with far less fans in them for the national team, knowing that, you're probably not going to get a gigantic draw against Granada. But this is one where, again, there's the discussion about markets that they play in. A lot of national teams will play in a national stadium over and over again. Obviously, that's hard to do in the U.S. because you're trying to build the sport and you're a massive country, which rules out 90% of the population. And so there's also the conversation about the price gouging, so to speak. What's the cost? Is the barrier of entry prohibitive for the average fan or a new fan or somebody who wants to be able to experience a national team game? Is that too high in terms of reaching new audiences? And then, like I said, the conversation around what is American, which I think was lost in translation in all of this, and more Christian Pulisic saying there wasn't enough probably butts in the seats, and we'd like to see more of a turnout considering this team is heading towards a World Cup soon, and this is sort of that send-off series right now.
100%. Now, Charlie, before I go to you, and I want to get your thoughts on this 100%. I think that what I love about his comments in some capacity, the silver lining is it is putting U.S. soccer into the spotlight. I don't think Christian Pulisic had any intention to do that per se. I just think he wanted more U.S. fans in the seats. But it's allowed us to have a conversation offline or online or wherever, just off the field, about the price. Because from what I understand, if you went to a game in Cincinnati, maybe you're a family of four, you got $300 for tickets. You have $50, $60 for parking. Gas obviously is astronomical right now. So it's costing you $400 or $500 on a weeknight when kids have school. It's a lot.
I wouldn't be able to go as a kid. I can tell you that. In my
100%. I couldn't go to any World Cup.
I didn't have cable, guys. I wasn't catching the game. Period.
Well, that's true, right? You got to hear about it. Yeah. It's just so they had to have known that going in, and so now there's obviously some talk that with this new CBA that there's like a new sellout clause. If they sell out, then the players get more money. I don't even know if Pulisic was going that route, which would be super funny. He was like, dude, why isn't everybody here? I want to make some more cheddar. But I just feel like it has to put that under the microscope a little bit, because when I look at the prices, or at least what I heard and saw for the Mexico-Uruguay game in Phoenix, those prices were a lot more affordable because they probably take into consideration that if they want these fans to show up, they might not have the same amount. Like, it has to be a reasonable price. And it just feels like right now U.S. soccer is pricing out a lot of fans that would love to come, but just can't afford it. Chuck?
Facts. That's all I have to say.
So I wonder what the play is moving forward. And maybe that's why Will Wilson stepped down. He's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. I don't want to get into all of this. But if you're U.S. soccer, let's say this hypothetically, and then we'll let everybody go. I know this is like a hot topic, but Heath, I'm going to come to you on this. How does U.S. soccer address this moving forward? Or there's a lot of fans out there that think that U.S. soccer just doesn't care. And I don't think it's that. I just feel like there's a disconnect between reality at times in some of the decisions that are being made. Or maybe there's too many cooks in the kitchen and there's too many people trying to chime in on it and nothing gets done and it gets paralyzed in some ways. What are your thoughts on how U.S. soccer? Because I feel like there should be a game where like tickets are super affordable. And we even look at Villarreal versus Liverpool in the Champions League semifinals. Like Villarreal made ticket prices affordable so that the whole city could have a chance to come.
Yeah. I mean, a one-off like that is different than trying to build sustained, right? It's revenue sources for the U.S. Now, they just signed a brand new collective bargaining agreement that's paying them quite a bit of money. That money has to come from somewhere, right? That could come from sponsorships, that can come from TV deals, that can come from merchandise sales and things like that. That can come from ticket sales in stadium, which means all of that put together, there is, I promise you, spreadsheets at U.S. Soccer where they're looking at what is the kind of what we're tracking on from a revenue standpoint and what we need to be able to be sustainable as an organization. And that's probably where you're seeing this flex on ticket prices because, again, they've got to start moving towards being more sustainable in-house. They've depleted most of their resources. I'm not saying that's why they've got prices at that point, but it's all comes down to how all those numbers come together into being like, well, how do we pay the players? How do we pay our staff? How do we, afford being one of the best run organizations or in theory, best run organizations in the world in terms of a federation. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but certainly in terms of building fans and building the sport and growing the sport, I do think that there's a responsibility to make the ticket prices in some way more affordable for fans because you're ruling out a number of fans like the three of us who would have never gotten a chance to experience the national team and fall in love with the national team and become a lifelong consumer or supporter in the way that we are now. Obviously, our experiences were in differently. You're missing out on potentially an entire generation of people that are now opening their eyes and more interested that you're going to want to consume come 2026.
The one last thing I would add to that is this game is supposed to be inclusive. And when you price people out, that makes it exclusive. And I think that needs to be addressed by U.S. Soccer. And I hope that it gets done very, very soon. I hope they look at some of their practices and make some adjustments accordingly.